Tickets are now on sale for the second annual ICARUS Fringe and Film Festival in Rutherford, New Jersey, June 7th and 8th. This year's lineup includes Jimmy Dore, Anna Kachian, Michael Tracey, Max Blumenthal, and Jack the Perfume Nationalist Mason. Go to ICARUSFest.com to get your tickets now. VIP tickets are already selling out, so I suggest hurrying. ICARUSFest.com. I'll see you there. This is the Unregistered Podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. This is a show about ideas, people, and behaviors that are considered inappropriate, out of bounds, or beyond the pale. The things you're not supposed to talk about if you're a school teacher, a college professor, a businessman, a politician, a parent, a neighbor, or even a podcast host. These are the things you're not supposed to say or even think if you're a good liberal, a good conservative, or a good citizen. Each week, I'll interview a person who has something bad to say. They might be a journalist or a professor. They might be a porn star or a drug dealer. They might just be an ordinary person with an ordinary job who doesn't care about the rules of polite society. I'm not interested in breaking the rules just to be a troublemaker. I'm interested in people who break the rules of conventional thought and to expand the scope of what is possible to say in our society. I'm interested in people who make me think. My guest this week is skeptical, seemingly, of everything, which is exactly why he might be the best journalist in the world. This is my interview with Michael Tracey. I am joined once again from Jersey City, New Jersey, by Michael Tracey. Just a fantastic journalist, and it's because you're skeptical all the time, and you're skeptical everywhere, and you've now recent months, well, actually, really for many years, you've been skeptical of, I guess, a movement you've been a part of. So let's talk about this. First of all, you call it like the alt media, and you're not happy with that term. I don't know what to call it either, but there is something that we need to call this thing, this sort of anti-establishment media universe of podcasts and blogs and Substack that is counter to whatever you want to call it, the liberal hegemonic establishment, to the CNNs, to the Democrats and the Republicans, to the international organizations. This thing, Joe Rogan, you could say, has kind of been the monarch of it, and then there's been all these subsidiary outlets like you and me operating in this. And we in this world that I'm describing have taken many positions that we agree on. One is Trump was not Hitler, is not Hitler. Another is NATO at least had a lot to do with the war in Ukraine. We'll get into that in a second. And you were with us. In fact, you were one of our leaders. You were one of the leading critics of people who had Trump derangement syndrome and of the Ukraine war. You were one of the leading critics in the world on the against the Ukraine war, criticizing NATO and the United States and their participation in it. Then, Michael Tracey, because of who you are, because you just won't stop with your questions, you started to ask questions about Trump that weren't deranged, that didn't accuse him of being a fascist, but said essentially that he's not that much different than everybody else, all the other presidents, and especially on foreign policy. And you've come up with quite a list of reasons to think that he's not the person who's going to end the American empire. And then, which you're right about, and then just a month ago, and this is why I had you on the show again, you wrote a very provocative, kind of startling piece about those of us, I guess, who have been opposed to the Ukraine war, opposed to NATO and the United States. And you say in it, without naming anyone, that some people in this alt media universe are now, let me use the word, cheerleaders for Russia, for what Russia has done to Ukraine.
Why did that's not an exact quote, is it?
I think so.
I used the
Cheerleading.
word cheerleaders, but I don't think I said cheerleaders for what Russia has done to Ukraine.
Well, but that's what you meant, right? Isn't that what?
Well, they're cheerleaders for the Russian war effort in Ukraine,
Yeah,
yes.
that's
Which
what I
they
said.
still euphemistically call the SMO because they dutifully parrot the Russian government's literal terminology.
Ooh, okay. Hold on, buddy. Just hold on. Hold your fire. I'll let you do that in a second. And you call, correctly the Ukraine war disaster. Did you see? I posted this last night. Did you see those 100 videos of Ukraine cemeteries, military cemeteries? They were posted on Twitter yesterday by Fennec Radar.
I didn't see whatever you're referring to,
It's
but I've
just
seen clips of that type of thing over the
no.
past
This
few
guy
months.
Fennec Radar on Twitter. He posted 100 video clips of people driving by Ukraine military cemeteries, and you just see fields and fields and fields of endless graves with Ukrainian flags. I mean, this because we don't know exactly the numbers because the Ukrainian government is infamously mendacious and don't tell us the truth about how many have died, and we can't trust the Russians
Well, so is
either.
the Russian government, which is part of my
We
point. I mean,
can't
you don't. It's not mutually exclusive for governments to be mendacious,
totally, and that's what I said. I just said that we
especially
can't.
warring governments.
We shouldn't trust the Russian. We shouldn't trust any government to give us accurate numbers. So
I agree.
someone went to Ukraine in a car and drove to all the military cemeteries and took videos, and it's just devastating to see. After 2 years, the Russians have exactly the same amount of territory that they did 2 years ago, 20%, the east and the south, essentially, Crimea and Donbass.
Well,
Not the
they have less. I mean, because it was in
tiny
September
bit.
of 2022 that there was the successful Ukrainian counteroffensive to retake Kharkiv.
Well, okay, but it's still
So they actually, so
basically like
that was a significant loss of territory. It was one of the things that
no, but
so many of these alt media war pundits confidently assured us could never possibly happen because they had this oracular insight into the nature of war, which is just blown up in their face constantly. I mean, Douglas McGregor, I will name some names: Douglas McGregor,
please,
Scott Ritter. These
yeah,
people are just utter charlatans. People are going to get mad when they hear me say that, but really, do yourself a favor and go look at these prophetic sermons that they've delivered over the course of this war. They've been just devastatingly wrong every step of the way. You've probably heard people like that, people, maybe them specifically, or people of that ilk, tell you with the utmost certitude that we could all expect the Ukrainian government to collapse imminently, right? I mean, that's been a trope since
yep,
the very beginning.
yep.
So how much longer does the war have to stretch on without the Ukrainian government collapsing before these people are treated like Harold Camping, who was the guy who had his followers hang the billboards around the United States? And he said that on March 21st, 2021, there's going to be the rapture and we're all going to go up to heaven. And then it doesn't happen. And then what do? They revise their biblical exegesis, and nothing they ever say is falsifiable. That's actually the credibility that I assign to these sorts of people. I mean, it's an embarrassing, but people think that they're countering the regime, quote unquote. And obviously, the regime is no longer a regime once their favorite beauty pageant proprietor is back in power. So, on January 20th of next year, it's not the American regime with a capital R anymore. It's just Trump presiding over the benevolent government and being thwarted by the deep state, despite his best intentions.
Okay.
But because they want to counterpose to conventional media narratives, which I agree with, because I have tried to maintain critical distance, critical scrutiny of conventional media narratives.
Mm-hmm.
But then they kind of like polarize against it in such a way that they just credulously regurgitate whatever nonsense they slurp up from these terminally discredited alt media spheres. And you did a great job describing the taxonomy of it before, with Joe Rogan as like a benevolent monarch or something, which which is kind of a funny way of putting it. But I think I don't have a great necessarily precise analytical term for it either.
Mm-hmm.
But people kind of get a general gist of what I'm referring to, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, these media spheres have just been catastrophically wrong. And not only that, they've become cheerleaders for the Russian state. And I first got into a big blow up over this in February of 2023. So about the 1 year anniversary of the war, when they held the Rage Against the War Machine rally in Washington, D.C. And if you looked at the literature for that rally, the public literature, the advertisements, how they were framing it, it was an anti-war rally. And they had these like social media figures who were just outright explicit proponents of the Russian state. Jackson Hinkle, who it's amazing who we even have to talk about as a serious person. Not that I use like the word serious to like filter out who's allowed to partake in discourse or whatever, but I mean, Hinkle. Please, you have to have some standards.
Yeah.
I actually, got him to just outright admit, and I was thankful that he was so open about it. But he just says, yes, I support the Russian government's SMO. I think it's justified. I want it to succeed. Right. So that's just supporting the Russian government's war effort.
Yes.
And yes, that whatever mentality he has is one that is widely shared, more or less, within these spheres. So, I mean, stop me from ranting when you feel like it, because I can keep going.
Keep going. No, keep going. I want to hear more.
But here's why I wrote that little piece.
Yeah.
That you were referencing. This is why you invited me on.
Yeah.
I think that I have maintained pretty close fidelity to how I viewed the prospect of the Ukraine war before it started. Because for months leading up to the February 24th, 2022 invasion, we were getting what seemed like they could potentially be mendacious and self-fulfilling prophecy style leaks from the US government saying, oh, an invasion is imminent, and then a week would pass and there'd be no invasion, and then nobody could say that they're wrong. And I still think that there's a lot of uncertainty around that pre-war period because information has trickled out about how there was, obviously you could have guessed this, but you can more factually establish it now. There was growing involvement by the intelligence services, U.S. intelligence services in Ukraine that then was put into this feedback loop of pushing out these imminent predictions of an invasion. And the reporting that I've seen suggests that the final directive was not issued by Putin until literally hours before, or at least Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, reportedly did not know that an invasion was imminent until the morning of. So within hours before it was actually launched.
Really? I didn't. I'm not. Where was the? Haven't seen this. Where
that was in the Financial Times, February of 2023.
Come on now. That's the FT.
So they're just fabricating it. I mean,
well, listen. I mean, the FT.
I mean, I'll pull it up right now if you want.
They're maybe even more propagandistic than the Times, right? I mean, the FT is like.
I mean, if you have a specific critique of that article, I'm willing to hear it.
Well, what's their sources? What are their sources?
I'm not just going to take this kind of knee-jerk.
What are their sources?
I don't think journalists always reveal their sources. I'm not saying it's the unvarnished, unalterable truth. I'm not saying it's the unvarnished, unalterable truth, but Russian officials vehemently denied that any invasion was imminent. I remember watching Dmitry Poli something or other on the Gray Zone show with Aaron and Max, vehemently denying, saying it was pure propaganda that Russia was going to invade Ukraine. This is like in early February of 2022.
Yeah.
Now, either he and his colleagues were all uniformly, just blatantly, brazenly lying, or maybe they really didn't know. Maybe there actually was contingency that the U.S. intelligence leaks influenced by boxing Putin in. It's similar to what they did with the Iran strike just a couple of days ago on Israel.
Right.
Oh, this strike is happening. It's imminent. It's definitely going to happen. We're claiming it's inevitable, thereby ensuring its inevitability, or at least contributing to it occurring. Right. Because it wasn't as though the U.S. was just a passive observer of Russia invading Ukraine. It was an active participant in the whole thought process that led up to it. It was integral in the chain of events. That's what I'm saying. It wasn't just the U.S. narrating whether it's going to happen. So here's the point, and I'll stop.
Okay.
At that time, part of the reason why I was skeptical that it would happen was because, number one, I'm not inclined to just mindlessly accept and then repeat U.S. intelligence leaks for reasons that are so obvious I probably don't even have to go over them right now. And number two, it really did genuinely seem that Russia invading Ukraine in the full-scale way that was being predicted at the time was crazy. It would be counter to Russia's interest, to Ukraine's interest, to Europe's interest, to the United States' interest. It would just be a disaster all around. It would heighten nuclear risk. It would cause tons of casualties, maybe even an insurgency down the line. would be destabilizing. It would have economic ramifications. So I thought that, maybe it is true that Russia is just so crazed that they would do something as stupid as this. But at the moment, I was disinclined to just accept on faith that that was going to happen for sure, or at least with the level of certainty that was being forced down our throats by U.S. intelligence officials. Okay, then the invasion happens. I still don't think that the U.S. is absolved of any responsibility for having precipitated that on a whole number of fronts, right? But it seemed like the whole tenor or the whole mode of analysis within what you would, broadly describe as this alt media sphere changed on a dime. Then now 2 years later, we're told that Russia had legitimate security interests and it was effectively correct to invade. So we're told the alt media consensus is that we should be rooting for the success of the Russian war effort, right? Am I wrong?
Well, I would say
that's what Douglas McGregor does. That's what Scott Ritter does. Scott Ritter is open about it.
They're not the kings of alt media, right? So that's not Joe Rogan's position. It's not Thad Russell's position. It's not Michael Tracey's position. There's many other people in alt media who are not, even the Duran, even the geopolitical realists who are now big on YouTube, Brian Berletic, all those people, they're not openly rooting for Russia.
Brian Berletic absolutely is. Brian Berletic is an open cheerleader and partisan of the Russian state. I've got him to admit it. And he gets hysterical about it because nobody in these ass-kissing, mutually reinforcing spheres of consolidated opinion ever challenges one another. It's a similar echo chamber effect as the corporate media. Brian Berletic, I can tell you for sure, I can give you the exact quotes if you want. No, he is a hard-charging partisan for the Russian state.
I haven't seen it.
And these people are all on the same dopey podcasts. They're all issuing the same glorious predictions about triumphant Russian military victory and over and over and over again. I mean, it's actually hugely embarrassing. And I actually said sincerely in that item that I wrote that I was ashamed personally because I feel it. I'm inundated, frankly, on Twitter, in email, in Substack comments, everywhere, YouTube. I'm sure there'll be comments on this video when it goes up by people who are genuinely supportive of the Russian state because of an analysis that they feel that they associate with me.
Right.
So I didn't do a good enough job making clear that no, I'm not in 6 months or a year and a half from now going to respond to algorithmic incentives and just do away with everything that I said before February of 2022. And for the first time in world history, start arguing that a preemptive invasion was actually legitimate and warranted and justified, and we should all, jump up and down the streets in favor of Vladimir Putin. I actually don't support Putin. I mean, I feel like it's almost become a consensus belief within these alt media spheres to support Putin. Am I wrong? I mean, you gotta agree that I'm directionally accurate on some of this.
You're wrong. Oh no, you're about 50% right. Yes, you're about 50%. Can we take a breath and just and try to introduce some nuance? Do you mind? Well, you're allowed to yell, but let's try.
Okay, I'll try to stop yelling.
No, dude, it's awesome. I love what you just said. It's really it's super fun and very important actually, because
and I went to and we should get to this, but I actually went to Russia because I'm not just like somebody who will spout from my computer in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Right. I actually try to have some skin in the game. So I accepted an invitation to go to Russia in December and, to the best of my ability, observe some of this for myself, and it actually strengthened my view on this. I found it deeply disturbing. Okay,
cool. I'm not
just like trying to get a rise out of people or troll or be contrarian. This is my genuine belief.
Okay, I would love to hear about that. In fact, I guess I didn't know about your Russian trip in December, but so I want to hear about your views of Russia. That's crucial. All right, so during the Vietnam War, my parents and I, as a very small child, were protesting against the Vietnam War. And even then, I was told that there were people who were in the anti-war movement who were not good because they supported the Viet Cong. They openly, there was a portion of the left in the 1960s and 70s that openly supported Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Cong. They wanted a communist revolution, not just in Vietnam, but in the whole world. And we said in the anti-war movement, most of us, we're not them. We are not for communists. We're not for Ho Chi Minh. We're not for that. We're just against the U.S. war, what the U.S. is doing in Southeast Asia. During the Iraq War, 2003, 2004, there were, and I actually, with you and Aaron Mate, kind of debated this at ICARUS Fest last year. There were elements in the Answer Coalition, which was the leading anti-war organization at the time, who were openly supporting Saddam Hussein. Now, they were like less than 1% of the anti-war movement, and most of us in the anti-war movement who knew about them denounced them and said, we have nothing to do with them, that's not us. At the Rage Against the War Machine rally, which you talk about, oh man, there were Russian flags, and yes, there were not everybody.
Sure.
And I want to be really clear here.
They had Tara Reid hoisted up on the stage.
Totally.
If the CIA wanted to discredit the quote anti-war movement, I don't think that they could have held a better rally.
I agree. Oh, it's horrible.
2 months later, Tara Reid
terrible
defected to Russia by faking this martyrdom tale.
I know.
Which is absurd.
I know. Okay. Now,
and she only ever had a public profile because she faked a rape claim, and she's a con artist and hallucinating.
I know.
And this is who they. But I mean, this wasn't just people at a rally holding up a sign like any oddball that shows up at a rally. I mean, if you hold a public rally anywhere in the United States, there are going to be oddballs and eccentrics who show up. If you go stand on a street corner in New York City, you're going to encounter those people. I'm not talking about randos. I'm talking about the actual organizational premise of the event itself and the people that they chose to elevate and highlight as emblematic of the cause that they were promoting. So it's different than just random people on the street having a zany opinion. It's people that they were selecting consciously as reflective of the message that they were trying to propagate.
Was Scott Horton a part of that?
Yeah, I think he was. And I debated him about, I debated him on that as well.
He's not pro-Russian.
I'm not saying that everybody who participates was therefore a Russian asset or something.
He's not pro.
But some of them actually were. Some actually were open.
Some.
Okay.
About half. About half. How about our other?
Think about that. If about half of the only anti-war rally that you're calling anti-war, I think falsely, and actually discredits whatever anti-war cause you want to.
I agree.
You want to push.
I agree.
If half of them, 50%, let's say it was 51%, because it's hard to really make a precise quantification. I mean, I think it's very plausible that an outright majority were actually cheerleaders for the Russian state, which is disturbing to me because Russia invaded Ukraine on spurious grounds. Putin fabricated claims that there was an ongoing genocide. This is what bothers me.
Okay.
Under most circumstances, people, I mean, when the U.S. invaded Iraq on false pretenses, nobody had any problem, or nobody now would have any problem dissecting the deceptions, right? But Putin invades Ukraine, basically crushes any internal opposition to the war. He blocked Boris Netsevin, I think is how you pronounce it, from the ballot for the presidential election in March of this year, who was the one, kind of milquetoast liberal who actually had an anti-war critique, blocked from the ballot, okay? Censorship is extreme in Russia. He actually has shut down newspapers, jailed people who do the most mild protests. That's actually real. That's not just an invention of the CIA or whomever. Maybe some of it could be exaggerated around the margins, but it's a real phenomenon in Russia that's occurring. And yet the same people who love to tout how much they are into free speech and open exchange of ideas or whatever, for some reason they just, I don't know, they have this instinct to tell us how wonderful Russian society is operating at the moment.
Okay.
And I just don't observe that. I was taken on a tour at the actual Kremlin, okay? Which I had never been to before. I'd never been to Russia before December of last year. And they took us to a museum exhibit in the Kremlin, which, is interesting. It's a world landmark. I'm happy to see it. But they have a whole section devoted to this idea of Novorussia, okay? And I remember talking to people early on in this post-February 2022 war who were telling me, again, with all the confidence in the world, that this idea of Novorussia as an end state or end goal of the Russian war effort was a fabrication of the American intelligence services. And I didn't know. I mean, I had never really studied Novorussia that in depth in the first place. What Novorussia is this archaic geographic concept of this swath of Ukraine from roughly just east of Kharkiv and then to Odessa, which is disturbing because it means that they're going to have to retake Odessa militarily in order to complete the conquest.
Yes.
And it is a conquest now. I mean, they're
Yes.
seizing
Yes.
land militarily,
Yes.
which we're told was never the aim. I mean, maybe it wasn't, but the war aims have clearly expanded in that case.
Okay. Yeah.
But they had this whole exhibit dedicated to Novorossiya. Okay, and because they had, what I was told by the Kremlin tour guide was that most Russians had no clue what Novorossiya was either 2 years ago. So what the Russian government has done is, because the initial, whatever strategy they employed in the early stages of the war clearly backfired, they're covering, they had to cover their tracks and basically come up with this whole rationalization for the war effort, and that has included adopting much more maximalist aims and then imbuing the war with this like cosmic metaphysical significance about how it's this battle between Russia and Western decadence, upholding traditionalist values. When I was in Russia, the oligarch, or whatever term you want to use, who was organizing this event that I attended, which was probably, I don't even know how to describe it still. He was bragging about how great it is that the Duma, the Russian Duma, was just on the verge of enacting a nationwide abortion ban. And he was saying, how isn't it great that we're basically criminalizing homosexuality? We are we've driven all the Russian liberals out of society. Now, I'm not a Russian liberal. I'm not even that like invested in maintaining the legality of homosexuality in Russia. But they're using the war fever that's induced by the Ukraine conflict to achieve all these domestic aims that I think people in the US, if it were anything remotely like it were happening here, they'd be out of their minds. But because Russia's positioned as against the regime, meaning Biden, I guess, it means everyone's just hyper credulous, all skepticism out the window. I mean, this is another point, is like criticizing Russia is never something that I have ever been that focused on. The only reason that the whole Russia issue entered into my frame of consciousness was because of the Russiagate fraud, which I still call a fraud. And I was accused incessantly of being a stooge of Putin, of being paid by Russia, blah, 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 blah. But I was only even really delving into it because of the way that it intersected with US politics.
Right.
So 95% of the time, I'm focused on the culpability of the US in precipitating something like the Ukraine war, or escalating it once it begins, sending more and more significant weapon systems and so forth, and showing diplomacy. But in the 5% of the time where I happen to be in Russia, or if I'm being hectored by so-called alt media people or activists or people who I'm sure will comment on this video, that I need to understand that Russia had legitimate security interests, and therefore I should cheerlead for the Russian state, and then they'll deny that they're cheerleading. Of course, I'm using that as in a dismissive, half sarcastic way. I'm talking about anybody, and I said this in the piece, anybody who openly supports the war aims of a government that's at war, I'm calling a cheerleader. Okay. So whether you claim that you're doing it like somberly or with reservations, I'm still calling you a cheerleader, because I'm using a derogatory term to describe what you're doing. But I'm told to do that all the time. So
thank you.
I should really move out of here, because
you should move to the suburbs.
But in the 5% of like my waking life, when stuff like that commands my attention, I'm going to be honest about it and not like bend over backwards to talk about how it's actually great that Russia preemptively invaded Ukraine, and we're all involved in this. We're all teetering on the edge of nuclear brinksmanship.
Yeah. Okay. So let me say what I think you're right about. You're right about Doug McGregor. You're right about Scott Ritter. Scott was on my show a couple times, I think, very early in the war. And then when I realized that he was cheerleading for Russia, for Putin, I completely distanced myself from him. I will never do anything with him. You're right about them. Jackson Hinkle, my God, when he, after about 6 months, I think, into the war, he was just openly saying, yeah, I'm pro Putin. The rest of it. Yeah, no, you're totally right.
Let me just stop you really quick, and then I'll let you finish your thought. But Ritter and McGregor, I mean, could you name two people who have been more sought after for their supposed expertise within these alt media spheres than those two? You just said you had Ritter on your show several times.
I would say the Duran guys, and I would say,
okay, well, I don't know as much about them, but let's just focus on those two for the moment. I mean, what could be inferred from the fact that they in fact, by your own concession, do represent this mindset that I'm describing.
It's a problem, and I'm glad you're calling it out. And this is why I had you on the show. I think you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, though, because what, Michael Tracey, does this tell you? All these idiots who are clearly pro-Putin, pro-Russia, cheerleading for a war, I agree with you. What does that tell you about the war itself? Does it change your position on the war?
Well, it's my position on the war in like what respect? Because if the position on the war that you're referring to is
On U.S.
that
policy,
one should, well,
on
no, it
US
doesn't change
policy.
anything about U.S. policy.
Then we're good. Then that's right.
Okay.
Which is what? That we should just not have any
But
support.
then people make it up. Well,
What's your position?
I have a critique of U.S. policy, which is that it's contributed to this escalatory cycle and gotten us stuck in a perpetual war that could lead to nuclear calamity.
And we should not. And we should not support Ukraine, right? We should not send arms and money to Ukraine. Right?
I mean, this is going to sound like an invasion. I don't even really go to that level. I offer no prescriptions for what anyone should do. I've detached from the entire American political process.
Love it.
I'm just trying to analyze what they do. And what they have done since February of 2022 is escalate the war at every step.
That's great.
And so has Russia escalated the war in various regards. I mean, here's the point. Here's the point of no return for me, right? At least in terms of altering the current cataclysmic trajectory of the war. I thought that if you don't get that done within the first couple of months, then it's basically a lost cause, because the momentum of the both sides' war effort is going to get so entrenched and so unmovable, and both sides are going to radicalize to such a degree that there's not going to be any kind of reconcilability anymore. And then, and to me, that cutoff point was in September of 2022, when you probably remember Putin gives this big kind of landmark speech announcing the annexation of the 4 oblasts. Where now officially, legally, they're declared to be Russian territory of the Russian Federation, including areas where there's active warfare. So nobody knew what the implications of that were going to be exactly. I mean, if Putin actually followed through on what he was claiming, presumably that could mean that you could just launch a tactical nuclear weapon because there's an incursion into Zaporizhia or something.
Okay.
But anyway, that's when that was the point of no return for me. I'm not telling anyone what they should or shouldn't do. I mean, I actually do think that if Ukrainians have been told that they can rely, like Biden has said, on U.S. support for, quote, as long as it takes, and then all of a sudden they have the rug swept out from under them, that is kind of an injustice done to the Ukrainians. I'm not supporting any aid package or anything.
Okay.
Like, I think it's a whole boondoggle. But I'm just not going to say that, on my positions I'm against such and such policy action, because I've divorced myself from it.
But JD Vance is not a Putin cheerleader. He's definitely not pro-Russia. He is simply saying, and
he's in favor of Ukraine. He's in favor of arming Ukraine. I'll show you the quote. I mean, this is the misconception with all these MAGA Trump people. They're frauds.
He's currently.
Well, I don't know what his current position is, because he's tactful about phrasing how he puts things.
Come on.
I'll give you the quote. I'll pull it up. Right now.
Wait. You can't say that like the MAGA movement there is pro-Ukraine. They want to pull funding from Ukraine. Come on.
Well, Donald Trump is the leader of the MAGA movement. He just hoaxed his own supporters.
Besides Trump, I mean, I'm talking about MTG, Vance, all these people who have been saying for 2 years now, we need to stop funding Ukraine. Come on. Steve Bannon, those people, they're not pro-Russia. They're just anti-US support for Ukraine.
Well, I don't know.
So are you critical of that? Are you critical of that position is my question. Are you critical of taking that position?
Of what position?
Of making the argument that the United States should abandon Ukraine.
No, I'm not on principle.
Well, that's half of us.
I don't know, but I don't. Well,
that's half of us. That's all we're saying. That's half of us. That's all we're saying.
I mean, I would have agreed with you maybe even a year ago or even before that. I don't agree anymore. I think that one of the disasters of allowing a war to be prolonged in the manner that it has is that people absorbed all kinds of crazy polarizing beliefs that they invest into the war effort. So the Ukraine war became like a proxy for like American culture wars in a sense. That's why when Tucker had the interview with Putin, everybody was expecting that Putin was going to use it as an opportunity to counter signal or something to American conservatives. Amusingly, Putin actually didn't even take that opportunity and was, if anything, sarcastically dismissive of Tucker. But that's what people were thinking was going to happen. So you do. I mean, and here's why I don't think you could just reduce it to, it's just Scott Ritter and McGregor and a couple other people. Those are just emblematic examples. I'm telling you, in my own comment sections on everything I do, 80% of the time, people are scolding me for being insufficiently supportive of the rightness or
Right.
righteousness of the Russian war effort. So
Right.
yeah, I do notice that. I'm not above reading comments. I
Okay.
actually get a lot of good information from them. Much of the time,
Okay.
and it's impossible not to notice this trend. Are people who engage with me online the be all end all of civilization? No, but I think this is a very widespread trend, and I'd be shocked if when I look at YouTube, whenever this goes up, that there's not a large percentage of people who are reflecting this very mindset that I'm articulating. A lot of it has to do with the misportrayal of the Mearsheimer critique.
Yeah.
Mearsheimer has a realism critique, right?
There
So
you
they're
go.
saying that Russia has security interests that we should have anticipated that they were going to act upon. And I agree with that.
Okay.
I've been praising Mearsheimer for his clairvoyance for in 2014 writing a New York Times
There you go.
op-ed saying, if you've armed Ukraine, there's going to be war. That's correct. But the thing
Okay.
is, people have now distorted that into this moral position where it's not just about refraining from provoking Russia because they could take a hostile action. It's that Russia is actually affirmatively and morally correct for by taking the hostile action, which is a complete distortion of the Mearsheimer view, at least as I've always
Even
understood it.
further. I mean, even further, they're saying, and I've seen this. You're right that Russia is essentially a better country than the United States. It is essentially a
Yeah.
better culture. Right.
Yes.
Right. In essence,
No.
the essence of Russia is superior to the essence of America. That's
Well, yeah, and
absolutely
they're parroting this ass covering justification for the war that Putin and senior government officials in Russia desperately adopted after the initial stage of it was botched.
Mm-hmm.
Because then they retrenched into once they withdraw from the Kiev area, they retrenched into this grinding trench warfare where it's like World War One, where you maybe can seize like a couple of meters in a few weeks or whatever the precise number is.
Yeah.
So the initial whatever plan there was clearly failed, right, in the early stages. And then
Well,
what did they do to like many? Well, tell me if I mean
it's
maybe
debate.
not.
It's debate.
I
I'm
think it's
not sure.
debatable too. I'm not saying it's I have all the.
You're talking about
I think the initial
Mar
advance to Kiev
to
by
Kiev,
Russia.
yeah, and then they retreated. Right. I mean,
Yes.
Scott Ritter and others have argued that that was a decoy, a feint to go to the south and the east.
Right, but then okay, well,
Whatever. Who knows? We'll
it
never
didn't
know.
seem to work especially
We'll
well.
never
Whatever
know.
they did.
We'll never know.
Um,
But yeah.
but the thing is, to cover their tracks, what they seem to have done is to grab onto this cosmic argument around the fundamental essence of Russian civilization being superior
Mhm.
to Western civilization. And I'm not
Totally.
a huge fan of all aspects of Western civilization either. However, I've always been wary, going back to the War on Terror years, of this clash of civilizations rhetoric,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what governments always try to employ
Mm-hmm.
to bamboozle their populations to support failing war efforts. And
Yeah.
that's what's going on in Russia. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was in Russia, they trotted out Dugin, okay, which happy to talk to him. He saw his daughter was in fact car bomb assassinated in August of 2022,
Sure
which
was.
actually made him into a martyr figure. My understanding is he actually was fairly obscure within Russia itself.
He was on my show.
Oh,
Yeah.
was he? Okay.
Yeah. 2 years ago, just before the war, he was on my show.
Okay.
He
Well, I
is.
mean,
He's not.
you think it's correct that before the war he was more well known among, like, I don't know, Western Russian
Us.
observers than within Russians? Yeah,
Among
than within
us.
Russia
Yeah.
itself.
That's what Mark
But
Sloboda said to me, who's friends with Dugin, and he's a Russian Russophile, and he lives
mhm.
there. He said that, yeah, it's not Dugin has no place in the Russian government. He doesn't have the ear of Putin. He's a marginal
But it's
political figure
changed.
in Russia. Oh,
But that's now
oh,
changed
oh, tell
based
me.
on what I observed.
Oh,
Okay,
tell me.
so
Do tell.
Dugin was introduced by people. I mean, I'm supposed to abide by like Chatham House rules in terms of what I
Oh, you met him.
experienced there to some. Yeah, he was
Oh,
there.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was there. I spoke to him.
He's amazing. Yeah.
Well,
You don't have to like him, but he's amazing if you don't like, whether you like him or not. He's quite an incredible thinker and figure.
but he was he was explained to me to be, by people who be in positions to know,
Mm-hmm.
as the most influential philosopher in Russia now, in part because of hold on,
Okay.
because of the martyrdom that he's now associated with because of the daughter.
That could be. That could be.
And I have the exact the quote is seared into my memory. He was introduced, and this is not by just random people. Okay, these are significant people in Russian government and society. It's
Okay.
not anybody who's trying to like make something up about to discredit Russia.
Okay.
He was introduced as they said that when Dugin speaks, Putin listens. So he has his ear. That's what was told to me. That's what was said. I don't know. I can't verify if that's true.
By Russian
What?
government officials?
By the people who organized this event, who are very much involved in Russian government.
Who are they, Michael? Who are they? Come on. We got to know who they are. That's crucial here. We got to know who these people are. Who hooked you up with Dugin? They're friends with Dugin, clearly, so they're not.
Yeah. I don't want to say right now just because I agreed to certain terms in my participation.
Really
and he was putting forth this apocalypse, and not just in private, in his public remarks that I've seen as well. It's like an apocalyptic, cosmological argument around the Russian war effort. They actually talk about it in terms of it having this cleansing or purifying effect for Russia. So the war effort, it's similar. I hate to even bring up this analogy, but it's the one that springs to mind. There were similar lines of argument in Nazi Germany in World War II for how the conduct of the war effort was strengthening and emboldening for Germans because it was purifying the society of contaminants. Okay. And that's almost verbatim what they were saying, what Dugin and his compatriots were saying about these ancillary benefits of the Russian war effort on Russian society. Mm-hmm. And I did find it just even, and so that enhanced the level of disturbance that I felt when, a month or two later, Putin does the Tucker interview and he all of a sudden starts analogizing himself to Hitler. Okay. So I spent 2 years chastising, mocking people, and I still do this, who have no frame of reference for anything historically than to just make the most like Facebook meme World War II or Hitler, Chamberlain, Churchill analogies.
Putler.
Yeah, exactly. Hitler, Putin's going to do a blitzkrieg across Europe, etc.
Right.
And then Putin goes ahead and starts analogizing himself to Hitler. I mean, I'm sorry, I kind of.
Well, that's not.
He did.
That was not his point, though. He was making a very different point.
Well, no, his point was that.
No, his point was
that the position that he was likening Ukraine in 2022 to Poland in 1939. And for that analogy to hold,
you and I are the only people on Earth, I think, who have done this particular research. That Hitler was in fact pushed into Poland.
Well, I know, I agree.
Okay.
And so is Putin, and to some extent pushed into Ukraine.
Thank you. That we agree on everything.
But that's still a disturbing analogy. That's what makes it more disturbing, because there's actually some accuracy to it. Like, I actually don't disagree with the substance of the analogy that Putin made.
Right.
But I still think anybody should be disturbed if he's analogizing himself to Hitler.
No, he's analogizing himself not to Hitler's Nazism. He's
analogizing himself to the geopolitical predicament that Poland was in 1939.
As a victim of Western powers. That's it. Okay, well, that could be anybody with any kind of politics.
So, but the point is, however legitimate Putin's gripes might be, and however accurate the analogy is, if he's saying, look, the geopolitical circumstances are analogizable to World War II, then that lets us know that they're girding themselves potentially for this genuinely cataclysmic worldwide conflict.
But Hitler, as you know, never wanted to go beyond Eastern Europe.
Right.
He never wanted a global empire, and Putin clearly does not. I mean, there's zero evidence that he wants a global empire, that he wants anything outside of Novorossiya, which is just Ukraine, basically. So he's not interested in going into Poland, and certainly not into Western Europe. So what's the problem here? I don't get it.
I don't know what he's interested in. I'm sick of trying to read his mind. I can only listen to and read his words, or observe his actions.
Okay.
Right? Because there's this whole genre of commentary where we're all supposed to be experts on like what's going on in the deep recesses of his.
Wait, hold on. Your audio. I can't hear you. Your mic just went weird.
Am I back?
Say something.
Hello.
It just dropped. No, the mic is low. This is what happens when you yell, sir. I advise you.
That probably was it, actually.
Xanax is great. I enjoy Valium as well. No, I hear you, man. I get pissed off too at these people, and you're right. I guess on the Jackson Hinkles of the world, and there are quite a few of them. And by the way, how many goddamn followers does he have now? It is disturbing. I didn't like. You're right. There is a major. We agree on everything here. Okay.
Okay,
There is. It's a large swath of the anti whatever Ukraine war contingent alt media absolutely is pro Putin, pro Russia, cheerleads. They're very large. It sucks. I hate them. I'm glad you're calling them out. That's
When you
why.
know why that's all the more irritating to me, it's
Why?
because I spent like 8 years
Yes.
fending off accusations that that was a real or significant phenomenon. And
Yeah.
now the facts force me to concede that it is an actual phenomenon. And I blame it on this polarization effect generated by the prolongation of the war and how people
Mm.
dump all their culture war grievances into the war and like wage the culture war battle by proxy
Yeah.
using the war
Yeah.
as the vehicle.
War does corrupt discourse and culture pretty quickly. This is true.
Yeah.
So, but what I want to force you to acknowledge again is that there are many of us who are not like that, who are opposed to the war for the right reasons and are simply opposed to U.S. involvement
Okay,
in.
I got that, but why is
Okay.
it that 80 like let's just assume that I'm roughly correct in my estimate. Why is it that 80% of my audience, right, basically aligns with this less than desirable perspective that I'm sketching out? Like, assuming I'm right about that, why is that? I mean, don't you think that's cause for some
The enemy
introspection? I do.
the enemy Oh, I agree, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I mean, it's dumb stuff. It's just the same with Vietnam. That's why communism, one of the reasons communism became popular in the 60s and 70s was because the United States was attacking it. So people on the left said, "Oh, well, if the United States, big bad Uncle Sam, is attacking that thing, it must be a good thing. So I'm a communist." I mean, that is really
But
what
those were
happened.
peasants running around in rice paddies. We're talking about Russia, which has the world's largest nuclear arsenal and which is actually a very powerful state. So it's just a whole different order of magnitude in terms of what people are now
Yeah.
arbitrarily rooting for the military victory of.
Yeah, fuck that. Don't do it. I agree with you on that. So, but let's you said
Oh, by the
something.
way, and it's horrible for Russia. I mean, one thing that I've pointed out that people aren't even aware of because it's partially covered up by this censorship regime that Russia has imposed is
Hmm,
that these border regions in Russia, in the vicinity of Ukraine,
hmm,
a lot of them have been torched. I mean, there have been incidents where Ukraine, shells a border village that they've had to just do these mass evacuations. Um, and but these are like peasants and villagers who don't get a whole lot of media attention, so they're just you know uh, anonymous victims whose interests never really get that much
yeah,
attention.
yeah,
And Russian major infrastructure is continuously getting bombed and drone struck. I mean, they talk about Russia's legitimate security interests. Was it in Russia's legitimate security interest to now be in a position where its critical infrastructure is routinely being bombed, and they have air defenses to thwart it? So oil refineries,
okay, good.
major bridges,
Let's talk about this.
nuclear air bases,
Let's talk about
uh,
this. Yeah,
even the Kremlin itself. It
yeah,
seems like it's been horrible for Russia, but I'm always told how I need to respect how wonderful this is in fortifying Russia's legitimate security interests. Does anybody think that's just kind of an excuse and there's like no basis for that claim anymore?
oh
How
no,
about
I
the
think.
hundreds of thousands or like whatever number? I know that there's always a debate over precise casualty counts. Whatever count you want to give to the current Russian casualties, I'm sorry, I find it profane to just kind of casually assert that all those deaths were warranted because they have enhanced Russian security interests. That's just pure state propaganda. And I would have the same view. I have the same view about the Ukraine
Okay,
casualties,
yeah,
and would have the same perspective on American casualties. It's
yeah, yeah,
just there's this blind spot toward Russia that again I would have been inclined in years past to downplay the importance of,
yeah.
but now it actually has become a real analytical problem.
Okay, so I think it's crystal clear that this is actually a resounding victory for Russia. From its own perspective, I don't think it was crazy. From their perspective, um, they withstood the most devastating sanctions ever imposed on any country by what was the unipolar superpower at the time. And their economy, it's true, Tucker's right. Their economy is generally more thriving than ours. It's doing just fine. They're producing more artillery and more missiles and more
That's not.
tanks.
Hold on. Wait. I got to
It's
interrupt you.
true. Okay.
More thriving than ours. How so? Because they've converted it into a war
Relatively.
economy.
No, I
I
mean,
thought, what happened to libertarianism? Now we're cheerleading for state subsidized
I'm not a
industrial
libertarian.
production to fund a war economy.
I'm not
That's how we gauge.
cheerleading. I'm
That's
saying
how we gauge the health
I'm
of
saying
economies.
those supermarkets are real. That's not the first supermarket video I've seen of Russian economy. The Russian
Right, and
economy
that
is,
was in time. I was there weeks before
you're miss,
Tucker was there. He was in the most affluent, ritzy part of the entire country in Moscow.
okay, fine.
Okay,
They
it's
did,
like
would you,
going. It's like going to Chelsea
you're
in
missing my point.
Manhattan and saying, "Look,
You're missing my point.
this is how they eat in Topeka."
You're missing my point. So it was a unipolar world, we all agree, until this war. The United States was the unchallenged
I don't
unipolar
agree with
power.
that.
Well, hold on. If you went against them, sanctions could ruin you. If you went against them, their military interventions could ruin you. They did. This is the first time when a country has gone against the entire Western regime, the United States and NATO, and everything they threw at them, and not only survived, but continued to prosecute the war generally successfully. I know it took longer than we predicted, but they still hold that territory. And this is the most important thing I need you to listen to. Now we live truly in a multipolar world because of this war. The emergence of BRICS as a real and growing and thriving thing that is presenting an actual alternative challenge to the West is only the biggest manifestation. I'm saying that Russia standing after 2 years now of the West throwing everything it possibly could at it
It
and
hasn't thrown
still,
everything possibly could at it.
well, okay, true. Well, I mean, no, they haven't gone in directly against Russia, but
Right. That would be the real marker of whether
that's Dan
Russia could
Bessner's.
withstand the military
Yeah,
might of the West.
that was Dan Bessner's argument. Yeah, and which is a good argument. I mean, but still, though, they are able to assemble and foster this multipolar
But hold on, this is
alternative.
you
That's
ascribing ideological, like abstract ideological content to a war. When I was in Russia, I was talking to people who had just go back and forth to the front lines. Okay, not people who sit and pontificate. I'm not saying that you're doing that, but not people who like talk about the multipolar order and think it's so wonderful. People who actually go and talk to the real world prosecutors of the war and people who are directly infected. There are literal trenches in Ukraine in the front line where people who in the same familial clan are hurling artillery shells at one another. So when you want to talk about me about multipolarity and wonderful that how all these fantastic ideological gains that have supposedly been made from the war effort, I'm just not interested. It sounds like a whole lot of hooey. It sounds like what every government does to justify its failed war effort. They infuse it with all this ideological claptrap.
No. You said in your piece and in this interview that the war was crazy. The invasion was crazy for Russia. For Russia. For Russia. No.
So you were hoping that the war would happen because you thought it would bring about a multipolar world?
I never hope a war happens. No, I did not.
But you were probably roughly in agreement with me at the time, thinking that this sounds like a crazy proposition, right?
No, I didn't know. I mean, by the way, Doug McGregor was the only one who predicted accurately that they would invade a week before. But anyway,
well, so did Anatoly Karlin, or AKA Powerful Takes.
No. I guess you're not, like, I'm saying from the perspective of the Russian state, it has been a successful war.
This is just a continuation of the misuse of the Mearsheimer argument. The perspective of the Russian state. Okay, so let's say from the perspective of the Russian state, they do want to have a full-time 24/7 war economy churning away so they can have drone production and they could revitalize their nuclear arsenal and whatever else they need to have state subsidization of their war effort.
Yeah.
Maybe from the perspective of the Russian state, that's like a quote good thing, but that's not like that's not how I analyze stuff.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't say I'm going to like permanently put myself in the shoes of corrupt kleptocrats
I know.
who have clung to power for 25 years, and if they think things are going well, then that's the ultimate endpoint of the analysis. That sounds like a total fallacy to me.
You can call them evil, but they weren't crazy.
I don't think
Again,
they're evil.
hold on. The emergence of a multipolar world, I think, is a good thing. Would I have killed 300,000 people for it? No, I wouldn't have killed one person for that.
Okay.
But again, from the
and that's
Russians,
the crazy trade-off to me. Even granting that the multipolar world is upon us, I don't even agree with that. I went to the BRICS summit in South Africa.
That's right, you did.
You know who didn't show up at the BRICS summit? Vladimir Putin.
Because they were going to arrest him or shoot his plane down. They're going to shoot his plane down.
Well, exactly. He couldn't go because South Africa was a signatory to the international. No, he didn't go because South Africa is a signatory to the International Criminal Court. And in March of last year, there was the arrest warrant issued for Putin and also his, child welfare minister or whatever.
Right.
So clearly, the multipolar world was not strong enough to resist the depredations of the U.S. to even allow Putin to make a basic diplomatic trip. It was actually pretty humiliating. Every other world leader in BRICS was there except him. He couldn't go because Russia did not have the power to facilitate his trip, because the United States, through its State Department hijinks, had concocted this arrest warrant under the fake premise that the ICC is an independent entity, which it isn't.
So, okay, you don't see any positive outcomes for Russia, for the Russian
I see no
state?
positive outcomes whatsoever from this war. I really do not. No, zero.
For Russia?
I'm not. For no one.
For Putin? Wow.
Nope.
Okay.
I mean, maybe. Putin's. Putin was just quote reelected. I mean, that's another thing. You can't point out. You have to be totally credulous about Putin seizing another 6 years with absolute power, effectively.
Yeah.
Because everybody's supposed to recognize how much he's cherished and valorized in Russia. And I don't doubt that obviously exists within Russia. That's another feature of a war effort. It creates this rally around the flag effect, where every leader successfully deploys propaganda to enhance his standing within the domestic population.
Sure.
And so, but there was no contested, there was no legitimate election this year. So there was not even an ability for Russian society to litigate what they want to do with the war. The one even minimally anti-war candidate was blocked on totally specious grounds from even running.
Right.
Right. So yeah, I mean, there might be some short-term benefits for just fortifying Putin's power. I mean, I actually think when the whole Prigozhin episode, I remember being pilloried for it at the time because I thought that this actually redounds to Putin's benefit. He neutralized the one apparent threat to his continued rule. And I was at the BRICS summit actually when Prigozhin's plane went down. I thought I might actually disrupt some of the proceedings because they were in the middle of hashing out the agreement to expand BRICS to include Iran, Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, and others, UAE. So I mean, I'm not denying that there is something to it in that the United States is not like it's not 1993 where the United States can just be in perpetuity the sole hegemon.
Yeah.
But I kind of view that as a neutral development. I don't think that I think there's I think there's actually a good case to be made that multipolarity breeds additional conflict.
Here we go. Michael Tracey is an American imperialist, it turns out.
No, I'm not. I'm not invested one way or another in it. Like I try to detach. But I don't know. I think that I think there are upsides and downsides to both. Like I'm not a partisan cheerleader for either one.
No, there's a good argument that there is an argument and there's some evidence for it that the American empire since 1945 has reduced armed conflict. We've had less armed conflict since 1945. We don't know if that's the cause of that, but it is a decent argument to make. Yes.
Yeah, like when I was in Moscow, they had us at hotel. It was funny. It was like in this hotel chain, Intercontinental.
Yeah.
But that chain pulled out of Russia along with all the other American corporations. But they hadn't changed like the exterior facade. It's an Intercontinental yet because they were going to they were going to change it to just Continental. And so they had to like clarify to visitors who were checking in that they hadn't made the cosmetic adjustment yet to actually reflect what the true brand was. Oh, I'll give you one thing that actually might be to Russia's benefit from the war. look, I'm not going to say like there's rarely is there ever anything that's 100% to 0% in either direction on this stuff. I just don't think that the benefits outweigh the costs so neatly as people like to claim with the Russian war. And also, I mean, how about the casualties? I mean, what's the correct casualty figure? I don't know. If you want to just like put a number on it, the idea, I mean, it seems like Russia's probably had significantly more casualties than the US did in Vietnam at this point. Maybe not. I don't know. Even if it's in that range,
Yeah.
you're telling me that's a worthwhile trade-off? I mean, that's a heavy ask to make of any society.
Not for me. No.
Yeah. But one thing that I did do is that I helped myself to. So the McDonald's left Russia. I actually found out, bizarrely enough, that Burger King stayed. So the one with the few American corporations that stayed is Burger King. So there's still like nothing ever happened. Burger King is still operational in Russia.
Oh, that's
if
funny.
anybody's interested.
Huh.
But McDonald's left for whatever reason.
Right.
And all the previous McDonald's franchise, at least in Moscow. And I was just really in. I mean, it was funny. I got a really time limited visa. So like I would have stayed probably longer and like toured around a bit, but you had to leave on the exact date. Otherwise, I don't know. I could be in a dungeon in Siberia somewhere, or with Evan Gershkovich or whatever his name is. I don't think that was actually going to happen. But like, I had to leave within a certain very constricted time frame.
Wow.
But even at least in just downtown downtown Moscow, the former McDonald's franchises have been converted to a more, I guess, locally owned fast food burger place. It was actually far better. I mean, this is the one Tucker should have focused on this. It was actually far better than your average McDonald's in the US. So that is true.
Really?
Yeah.
The food's better?
I found the food to be better.
Huh.
And significantly noticeably so. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Maybe because of local source supply chain stuff. I don't know exactly. It's just that if I took you like to the McDonald's right off of Red Square and then compared it to McDonald's in Jersey City, you would know instantly that the former McDonald's, they call it tasty period or tasty full stop in Russian. It was just far better quality. So I don't know. Maybe it's just a coincidence.
See, their economy is better than ours. I don't think that's
what Dugin was referring to when he was talking about the cleansing and purification of Russian society. I think that was maybe a very tangential side.
Kind of. Alexander does not like McDonald's. He's one of the greatest anti-imperialist thinkers of all time, by the way. Even though I know he is. Nonetheless, there's a bit of a contradiction in his support of what looks like a Russian empire. At least
that's a pretty significant contradiction, though. I mean, I don't use the word imperial. I think it's very rote and tedious to even revert to that terminology. But like, here's another thing with Mearsheimer. Okay, and I appreciate the analytical insights of Mearsheimer on a lot, but he still sticks to this line that there's no evidence that Russia ever wanted to seize territory in Ukraine, right? Or conquer Ukraine, I think is how he puts it.
Yeah.
And now isn't that what Russia's doing at this point? Like, don't you have to update your priors for new evidence as it comes in?
Oh,
where they're actually seizing and incorporating Ukrainian territory into Greater Russia?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I would.
Is that a conquest? Is that imperial? I mean, I don't even really care what term you use for it, but like, for some reason, people think that they can just like carve out this exception for Russia, like literally militarily seizing and conquering and absorbing.
I mean, they conquered a people who are more than 90% Russian identified and want to be part of Russia. That's pretty well established, I think.
Well, how do you know that? I mean, I know that's the referendum outcome in Crimea post 2014, but would you just reflexively trust or think it's valid to hold referenda under military occupation?
It's not just the referenda.
When half the populace who would be against Russia has already fled or not even voting?
No, it's not just the referenda. We know the voting patterns in Donbass for a decade have been pro-Russian. That's why they got punished in 2014. We also have
every
lots of polls
except Crimea voted to declare independence from the Soviet Union.
Okay, lots of polls, also of people, public opinion polls. Number 3 is that there was zero guerrilla grassroots opposition to the Russian troops from within Donbass, right? There was not that I know of, never heard of that. Normally, if the people don't want to be occupied, they fight back, like in Gaza.
Okay, fine, but there was a huge line, or what do you call it? I'm forgetting the term now, but when in the initial advance toward Kyiv,
yeah,
there was grassroots resistance to the presence of the
in Donetsk and Lugansk by the
No,
people.
In
Oh
Kiev.
no, I know. I'm talking about the people in Donbass.
No, I know, but yeah, so I'm
Okay.
saying it's not uniform across Ukraine.
Right, because in the West, they're not Russian speaking and they're anti-Russian racists, actually, generally speaking. But in
Well,
the East, they are. There's oh no, it's anti-Russian racism for sure among many Ukrainians. That's a common thing. So, but not in the East.
you're just going to
It's just
decry an entire population as like intrinsically racist.
did I say everybody? No,
We
but
should be racist.
it's a major part of it. We've countless
No, I mean, I
statements.
don't
Okay.
disagree that there's a racial component to it. I just think that's a bit of a general.
Major within Ukrainian culture. Anyway, all right. So
let me even say that's true. Let's stipulate that all of that is true. In no way does that get you to the logical leap that some kind of aggressive military intervention is the solution. If anything, it's probably counter to the solution. Again, I don't feel anybody's security interest. I mean, granting the tongue-in-cheek stuff about McDonald's and whatever else, marginal trivia that maybe you could claim is better, Russia's better off for because of the invasion. I don't see anything of actual substance or value that I would just objectively conclude is better in Russia because of the war.
How about for the people who live in Donetsk? Is it better for them now?
Seems like so. I don't know.
Well, they're no longer being shelled because they finally got kicked out of Avdiivka.
Well, they're in an active. So I mean, lots of Donetsk has just been flattened and destroyed.
There's still people living there. That's why Avdiivka. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it looks like a ghost town, or a lot of it looks like
I know.
Grozny or something.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think just kind of casually assuming that everything is better off, because a war has been raging for 2 years. I honestly don't think that in almost any circumstance, warfare solves a problem. So obviously that goes beyond the specifics of this particular war, but I think it almost always exacerbates and worsens problems and makes.
Depends on what the problem is. I mean, for the United States in 1941, the problem was that they were not yet the global empire. In 1945, they were because of the war. So war. What do you mean? War solves lots of problems. Depends on what your problem is.
Should maybe specify like ameliorates suffering.
Oh well, obviously not. Right. Maybe long term.
But you're saying we should just assume that the people in Donetsk have had their suffering ameliorated by the onset of the war. And I'm just not willing to grant that so crudely. I don't think
the Ukrainian military is no longer shelling them from Avdiivka. They can't because Russia
they just
took them out.
grinding trench World War I warfare.
Not anymore. Not in Donetsk. No, that's over. Russia defeated.
But they are still. There is still shelling happening.
Not
still getting.
Not over there.
I don't know.
Not where it started.
So you're saying within Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts,
yeah,
there's not there's still not shelling going on.
I don't of civilian areas. I don't think so because they can't because they got routed. They got routed from Avdiivka, which was where they had.
You fire a shell from a distance. That's why they're always screaming for intermediate and longer range missile technology.
I mean, I don't know. I've seen reports in the last month since Avdiivka fell that's just not happening anymore. I don't know.
Avdiivka basically no longer exists.
Right. I know.
So who's better off? I mean, so if generations of your family lived in Avdiivka and now it's been destroyed.
I know, man. I'm saying it's just there's gives and there's huge gives and takes here. It's not you're the one who's making absolutist claims about this war. I'm the one who's being nuanced here.
I'm making the absolutist claim that I am not willing to concede that there's anything good that came of it, really.
Cool.
Other than stuff that's very much around the mark.
And I'm sympathetic to that because I hate war more than anything, and 300,000 people probably are dead.
I'm the only one who is willing to apply that standard consistently to this conflict, just as like I would any other.
Fair enough.
I'm not carving out as Putin. I'm going to let you because I love how he rails against Western decadence.
I will not challenge that. I will not because I hate war, and I'm with you. I'm with you spiritually on that. I am. I just think there's some nuance to it and some exceptions.
Oh, I was going to make a point that at the hotel in Moscow that we're staying at.
Yeah.
Other than like the handful of gadflies who they brought in from the U.S. to like participate in this affair, everybody there was Chinese.
Oh. And this was last when December?
It's mid-December of last year. Yeah.
Oh, that's what everyone needs to be.
Like if you go down to breakfast in the morning or something, whatever,
That's
it's
important.
everyone is Chinese. It
There
was
you go.
amazing.
There you go.
And look, I have no problem with China. I'm fighting with people who want to fear monger over China almost as intensively as I have over the years from people who want to fear monger about Russia. But I don't know. I do think that there's the possibility that this whole multipolarity that people love to extol,
Yeah.
I mean, it does seem like it's setting the stage for some global confrontation. You and I have talked about this in the
Of
past.
course. Of course it is. I
So,
know.
like, what's the?
What's the upside?
I just don't necessarily welcome that. I mean, what one thing that they wanted us to do, these American gadflies who they brought in,
Mm-hmm.
was talk about all the wonders of multipolarity that we can all,
Mm-hmm.
be looking at fondly for that are going to, I don't know, restore humanity or something.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I said in like my speech that I gave to this group was, look, you could talk in the abstract about the glories of multipolarity all you want, but what I tend to do is like read the national defense strategy that's put out by the Pentagon and stuff. And the multipolarity that they're contemplating has to do with multipolar nuclear war. Literally, they're talking about how the United States needs to have a level of readiness where it, for the first time, because this was never the case during the Soviet Union, it needs to be prepared to wage simultaneous nuclear war. And they don't always necessarily specify that it's against Russia and China, but that's obviously the only um, real opponents here, or combatants to the U.S. And so I don't know. I just think that looking through with rose-tinted glasses at this prospect of multipolarity because it like flatters some ideological impulse. I don't know. I'm not on board with that necessarily. Not that I'm defending American hegemony, which I will grant every problem or flaw that people want to point out with it. But I'm not so sure that the alternative is like as wonderful as people sometimes make it out to be.
That's a really important note of caution about this. I agree. You're right. There's been nothing but basically celebrating the rise of the multipolar world. And you're right. I've been thinking in the back of my head the whole time, wait a minute, this just means a new conflict.
Another thing about BRICS when I was there, it's like nobody could define what BRICS even was.
Yeah.
And I think the significance of BRICS is a little bit overstated. It's not
Yeah.
an alliance. It's not a military alliance. There's no what's that?
No, you're right. You're right. It's
Oh yeah,
yeah.
They can barely even concede it's like an economic bloc because it isn't really.
Right.
It's just like an annual gathering of world leaders and operatives and stuff, which is fine. I mean, it was interesting. I enjoyed talking to random African presidents and things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a declaration, really. It's just a declaration.
It's not like NATO. I mean,
no.
BRICS is so haphazard that
sure.
I was able to personally. I should admit this, but like I basically snuck into the world leader like dignitary section, and I was just able to meet Modi and President Xi and
oh wow,
and Lula, and it's just like if anything even like it was in the U.S., you'd be like mowed down by the Secret Service within 2 seconds. When I was in Munich for the security conference,
amazing.
They shut down an entire block. They shut down the entire city just so Kamala Harris could move a block. Whereas the joint collective, like I don't know, state capacity of Russia, South Africa, China, India, etc., like they couldn't stop me from like basically infiltrating. And I mean, I was in the, like how world leaders like at these international summits they meet like they have their like coffee clutch and they take their group photos and stuff. I was in that, and I was just like talking to them.
That's funny. You met Modi?
Yeah, I did. I tried to get him not to badmouth Trump, but I tried to get him to say something incendiary about Trump. And he, so it was right after Trump had been charged in Georgia on the RICO thing, which is insane. I was just trying to I wanted to see if he would like criticize the veracity of the charges, essentially. And he actually picked up on what I was doing, and he just started smiling. He's like a Zen mode about him. He's always smiling. He seems like authentic in his smile. I don't really know. Maybe I'm just being entranced.
I think it's Hindu, but anyway, yeah.
No, but isn't there like? But there's there is, but there's like a
yeah, it's similar in some ways.
There's cross pollination between Hinduism and
there's some similarities, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, he just seems much more even keeled than most world than Trump.
Wow.
And he just was smiling and just like patting me. He like patted me 20 times in a row on the shoulder. It was just like this. It just kept going. And like 45 seconds later, he's still doing it.
What does
And
that
then
mean?
I don't know. I'm still trying to interpret it. But he didn't answer my Trump question. But the point is,
Wow.
like people talk about multipolarity and how there's this rising counterforce to the U.S. And it's just like, I don't know, a lot that doesn't really translate to what I've been able to see firsthand, at least
Yeah.
in terms of the formidability of this like
Well,
rival bloc.
I mean, they're just starting out, man. Give them a few years. Come on. And also, most of the countries are relatively poor. I mean, we know
Well,
this.
okay, I'll give them a few years, but you just said that one of the glories of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is that it's ushered in this era of multipolarity. Okay, where is it?
It's starting. It's starting. It wasn't around 3 years ago in any
Yeah,
significant degree.
I mean,
Okay.
I'm going to try to go to China at some point, and I'll let you know if it
Oh,
reinforces this again, like rose-colored view of multipolarity. I don't know. I don't know enough about China really. I'll admit that I've never been there.
yeah. I want to go on a trip with you. I think we should lead like a delegation. I'm serious. I think it'd be amazing to places like
I would do it.
this,
Yeah, let's do it.
right? Wouldn't that be amazing? And then just be completely skeptical wherever we go and get into arguments everywhere and have world leaders pat our shoulders.
Well,
Um,
one thing I tried to challenge the people in Russia on is why do you guys still insist? And I think they actually sort of shifted on this afterwards. Like in the past couple months, there might have been a terminological rhetorical shift. It's just like, don't you guys? Why do you guys insist on constantly using the term SMO? This is like 2 years into the war, special
yeah,
military operation. They won't say
yeah,
war. They won't say invasion.
yeah.
It's like a speech code. It's like
Well,
you're on a. It's like you're on the dumbest college campus where you can't
yeah.
like say a gender name or something.
I agree. I mean,
It's like,
even my guys on the Duran, who I think are generally excellent, even they, I think, still call it the SMO,
okay,
which
maybe,
I don't
maybe this
like.
is
I agree with you.
overly cavalier of me, but if somebody actually does that, like you're saying the Duran guys do, I don't know. I don't watch them, but I've seen some stuff of theirs, but I don't regularly watch. If they're still saying SMO, what are they doing that for, other than to simply parrot the war euphemisms of the Russian government? Tell me.
Correct.
It's not an analytic. Is it an analytically accurate thing, or they just want to
I
be in
agree.
accordance with the state rhetoric?
I agree. This is my problem with them. They're a little too close to Russia. I agree. All right, let's move on. I want to and then I'll let you go, but we got to talk about Israel because you were there, and of course that's going on. You were there a few months ago, right? At the beginning of the
Yeah,
war.
I was there from late. I was there for almost a month, so from late October to
Oh
late
wow.
November.
Okay, yeah. Um, and you were on the West Bank and Tel Aviv, and you hung out with some crazy
Jerusalem.
settlers. Um, and you did not meet Netanyahu. He did not pat you on the shoulder, I don't think.
I did go to the Knesset though several times.
Oh yeah,
So
how's
I was
that?
at his. Yeah, it was interesting. Like here's a positive. I don't know if I would even say this is positive necessarily, but one thing that occurred to me was that if you have an American passport, okay,
Mm,
which
mm,
is a unique quote privilege,
mm-hmm,
um, it really is like an open society. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I mean,
Sure.
they know my views on things. They know that I've been critical of Israel. I had no problem getting into the country. I had no problem going to the Knesset on multiple occasions. I've met with MKs, they're called.
Mm-hmm,
So, parliamentarians. And
mm-hmm.
um, it's really just like a fact finding thing for me. I didn't want to like rattle off hot takes necessarily on the war because I had never been to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
People always assume I'm Jewish, but unfortunately, I'm not.
Right.
I wish I were. I would probably be better off.
Like we covered that early the first time you were on the show 5 years
Oh, did
ago.
we? Okay, good.
Had to get that out of the way. Yeah.
Um,
So people know. Yeah. But you're not.
okay. Um,
You're okay.
but I don't know. Yeah, I just talked to a whole lot of people with a whole lot of different views who, there were, there are left wing parties that are in the parliament that, the guys that I
Sure.
met who
Sure.
talk to the settlers. I mean, it's more of an open. There is like an undercurrent of liberalism or openness to it that I don't know that if you haven't been there, you would exactly appreciate. Now, if you're
For the citizen,
Palestinian,
for citizens, yes, it's open
for
for
citizens
citizens.
or Americans, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Right. Right. The
No,
people who
really,
pay for it all. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Now, if you're a Palestinian, it's obviously a entirely different story. I mean,
Yes.
it was a jarring experience to be in the West Bank and to actually be on like the border of one of these little enclaves where it's like in Zone C, I think it is,
Mm,
meaning it's the part of the West Bank that is administered entirely or technically administered entirely by the Palestinian Authority, which is kind of a farce, but that's like legally what
Right.
the
It
surviving
collaborates. It
jurisdiction is.
collaborates with Israel. Yeah.
Yeah, but just to see it in person, to see like how it all functions, it's just a jarring sight. Is what I'm trying to see. Trying to say.
Did you go to any of the
Um,
cities? Did you go to any of the cities on the West Bank?
I didn't really. I was told that at that time, I was taken on a tour of the West Bank by a liberal rabbi,
Yeah.
and he was telling me not to try even at that time attempt to even go into a city without like an escort. Like, yeah, I could have probably gone to Ramallah or something if I
Yeah.
had somebody who was escorting me, but just with an Israeli license plate to just kind of
But not Janine. You're not going
no,
there.
not Janine.
Yeah.
No,
That place,
Janine.
that
That's
scares
yeah,
the shit out of me. The videos I've
yeah.
seen out of there, that's
No, Janine. Everybody agrees. Even like the most liberal rabbi will say, "Don't even go
that's
near
very
Janine."
scary. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I kind of like deferred to the expertise on some of these people. I mean, I went to like Bedouin villages and things that are within
Mm.
Zone B, so like they're more it's considered jointly administered by by Palestinian authorities, but like it's basically within under full Israeli military control. And I went to East Jerusalem, which is technically Palestinian, and
Yep.
it's just yeah, it was just I'm so took me a while to process a lot of it actually because I had never been there before. Like even going to I don't know if you've been there.
No.
To go to the old city of Jerusalem. I guess beforehand I hadn't even really been fully cognizant of what the geographic layout of it was, but when you go there, it really is like nowhere else on earth. It's like wow, you kind of do feel maybe this is just superstition or something, but you do feel like an effervescent like religious energy or whatever. Um, and it can be overwhelming. And but I also don't like some of the again maybe this is my contrarianism or skepticism on the Israel stuff. I don't know, like even with the Iran missile strikes last weekend, there is like there's a certain element of anti-Israel or Israel critical commentators who are like, yeah, f around and find out Israel had it coming, or they have like a glee about it, and I just I don't know. When you're there, look, it is an ethno state. Obviously, I had never been to an ethno state before, so that's interesting.
Yeah, right.
But like, you can. I for the first time viscerally understood why people like ethno states or like want to live in one because there is like this sense of like just innate solidarity.
Right.
And I saw there was like a month or two ago there was a survey that came out by some NGO. I don't even know how legitimate the methodology was, but it's like a world happiness study or something, right?
Yeah.
So they gauge like the level of happiness of every country in the world.
Yeah, they're high.
You know the one country where there wasn't like crippling levels of youth depression?
Israel.
Exactly.
I know. Israelis are quite happy.
Yeah, so there is like something enlivening about it that it's really hard to put your finger on. I did have people come up with me and just again, assuming I'm Jewish, hug me and congratulate me for making Aliyah.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you're Jewish, you're entitled to automatic citizenship.
Yeah.
To break the news that I was not Jewish, but I was honored.
It's a fun place.
There's tons of before you look, there's just tons of babies and toddlers and running around. Obviously, that the birth rate is much higher among the religious portion of the population. It's part of the reason why Israel is probably on a doomed trajectory because soon enough, that the actual religious zealots are going to be the majority.
Right. Oh, I know.
The liberals. I mean, I was talking to a guy who was
that's right. That's a good
in
point.
Tel Aviv, who was and also another thing I wouldn't necessarily have taken for granted is in terms of the openness of the society is I remember like when the war. So after right after October 7th, there was some emergency law that was instituted that gave the government the power to essentially shut down any protest it wanted. But the protests were allowed to. The protests were never really shut down.
Oh yeah.
Or at least they weren't for the most part. And I was talking to a liberal Israeli, younger guy, who walks around. Who was walking around with his Czech passport. He's an Israeli citizen, but I guess he has Czech ancestry. And he's walking around with a Czech passport because he thought that at any time I'm going to have to flee to the Czech Republic or Czechia because of how overbearing the uh, religiously extreme elements of Israeli society have become.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was saying that there's like a whole like a subculture that he's involved in of like the remnants of liberal Israelis who are younger, because it's sort of the reverse of the U.S., where in Israel the more liberal or left wing generation is much older. It skews much older, right? But the rising younger generation is much more right wing and much more religious. Um,
Yeah.
but this guy was an exception in that he was a liberal from like a liberal Israeli sort of community, but he has this whole like subculture where they're kind of basically plotting on when they're going to leave, or what they're going to do. It's like white South Africans planning when to leave,
Yeah.
after the apartheid
This is
regime
it.
falls or something.
This is what I've been wondering.
And he was
Yes.
actually saying that what Israel is going to be more and more closely resemble Iran. It's going to be more and more it's going to be a theocracy.
Yeah.
And not wrong. I mean, Ben Gavir, look up that guy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a whack. I mean,
Yeah.
that's serious stuff.
And smoke.
Actually, the one time where there was like a genuine shocking authoritarianism that I just happened to observe is I've seen American police do a lot of crazy stuff over the years, but I never saw what I saw when I was in Jerusalem. And by the way, being in Jerusalem is a much different tenor than being in Tel Aviv. Tel
Yeah.
Aviv is like
My friends who live in Tel
you're at a
Aviv,
resort.
my friends who live in Tel Aviv, they don't go to
They don't
Jerusalem.
go to Jerusalem.
And
Yeah.
they say there's too many religious people there.
Oh yeah. I mean, you go. I mean, the first time I got to Jerusalem, you're just surrounded by people in the full religious garb, just walking around everywhere.
Oh, I'm
In
sure.
Tel Aviv, it's like gay pride parades and stuff.
I know. Yeah. Right.
But when I was in Jerusalem, and I mean, you should go. It's worth experiencing.
Oh,
It
I'm
really
going.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got. Actually, Jeremy.
Lafredo,
Yeah, he told me
recent
about.
guest on the show. Yeah.
Yeah. He was telling me that there was like these occasional protests at this courthouse because there was this school teacher who was an older left wing Jew who was criticizing the war and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Not many left, but a handful.
Mm-hmm.
It's like in Jerusalem, there's so few like left wing activists left that they all know each other. There's like 8 people, and they're all like over 50. But they were gathering because this guy had been in police custody for posting on Facebook stuff that was critical of the war, and they were going at like 10 in the morning to just do a very calm kind of run of the mill just protest, just for visibility, really. And all of a sudden, I was standing there. I did like a little Twitter post about this at the time. I got like a slight amount of video. I was just chatting very uneventfully with this woman who must have been 80. And all of a sudden I look up and there are these roid raging riot police who are under ultimately the command of Ben Gavir, who's the Interior Security Minister.
That's right. That's right.
All of a sudden they just charged us. I had like barely any time to react. They threw this 80-year-old woman to the ground. They started screaming at people. They were chasing people through the streets. And the reason why everyone was so shocked is because what I was told afterwards, again, by the left-wing Israeli Jews, that these are tactics that they would ordinarily only ever associate with being used against Arabs.
Right.
Now they're actually being used against the left-wing Israeli Jews.
Right.
They were chasing people through the streets.
I've seen it.
Throwing women to the ground. They
look
looked like they were on steroids.
Yeah.
They probably were.
Yep.
And it was frightening. I got punched in the back out of nowhere. I had to run off. It was crazy.
Go to Israel, get hit.
What's that?
You go to Israel and you get hit. That's
exactly.
what happens. That's what happens.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't like injured or anything necessarily, but like you get punched out of nowhere and you have like a reaction. And
dangerous.
So
country.
yeah, I mean, there's that dynamic much more so in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas in Tel Aviv, that's where they had the never-ending like anti-Netanyahu protests and stuff about the judicial reforms or whatever, and that kind of continued to some extent even during the war.
Yep.
Where it was mostly framed as we want the hostages back. We feel like Netanyahu has malicious intent in some way. He's not even trying to get the hostages back. He just wants to perpetuate the war, which probably was correct. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. And okay. Yeah. Well,
I forget the question you asked me about Israel.
Doesn't matter. So we're gonna do a tour, a world tour, I think. But we'll go to We'll go to Israel. And we're gonna do a tour of Russia with Jackson Hinkle. You and I. The three of
I'm
us.
good on. I'll sit that one out. I'll get a
Come
different tour.
on. That would be awesome.
Well, you know where I am thinking. Well, I think I'm thinking of going pretty soon.
Yeah.
Is to Ukraine.
Yeah.
I want to see if I can get in.
Yeah, you need to.
I'm going to go to Kyiv.
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
I should, right?
I wonder if you can. I hope so. I think you can. That'd be great.
Remember last year, I think I told you about this. I was trying to go to Lithuania, and they wouldn't let me in to go to the NATO summit.
Oh, for NATO. Yeah, right.
No, I wasn't.
They're onto you. They're onto you. Mr.
I think
Skeptical.
I might ironically have a better chance of getting into Ukraine than the Baltic states. I think the Baltic states are actually probably more radicalized.
Probably.
In certain ways.
They're ready for war, man.
Yep.
All right, dude. Well, thank you so much for this. This has been just like, as usual, a cascade of fascinating points and observations and provocations, and you are invaluable. And am I right? mtracy.net.
Yes, the URL has changed. Elon made it so you can't send Substacks out anymore on social media. So I did the whole upgrade of, which I probably was overdue anyway.
But it is your Substack. It is your Substack, but it's called mtracy.net.
Yeah, it was relaunched.
Sweet. Yeah, it's great. Everyone it's a must follow for sure. All right, man.
And I will be reading the comments on this episode to see if they are consistent with what I would predicted they'd be in terms of people being furious at me for criticizing the Russian war effort. Let's see if I'm right.
My audience is too smart for that, but we'll see.
I hope you're right. I want to. Please disprove me. I want to be wrong about that.
No, there will be some. There will be some Putin fans on you.
Putin floozies.
Yes, exactly. And I'll see you at ICARUS Fest, June 7th and 8th. It's on sale now, everybody. Michael Tracey's one of the headliners. It's going to be amazing. So that'll be fun. And yeah, I'll see you then. 2 months or 3 months.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man. Peace.
All right. Take care.
This is the Unregistered Podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. To become a patron of the show and have access to bonus episodes, AMAs, and the Unreported News Analysis Show, go to patreon.com/unregistered. Thanks for listening.